Well, hey, hello, and welcome to Real Talk with the Cummings. My name is Mark Angelo,
And I'm Lena Ariel.
and it's Tuesday. Tuesday.
Rainy Tuesday. It's
Yeah.
not rainy Monday.
No, it's rainy Tuesday. Actually, we
What's
got
that song?
soaked.
Rainy days and Mondays always get me down.
Yeah, something like that. We got super soaked leaving the gym. I mean, this time of year in Florida, it gets pretty rainy, and there's some sort of system developing in the, you said the Gulf, right?
Yeah, there was like something that was supposed to turn into like a tropical storm, and it was supposed to be kind of bad, but nothing really amounted much to it. But it's supposed to kind of whip up and go up into North Florida area. So we're getting kind of remnants of it, I guess, right?
Yeah, and we'll probably get a lot of it because once that moisture gets started, it kind of makes it very wet here. And wet means a lot of flooding and all that great stuff. Normally, I have the number up there for you, but
575
yeah, she didn't want it up there.
5930 because it cuts into my head. Whenever I do this, it gets into my head.
Anyway, it's 575
519
5930. And we apologized last week. She forgot to put the phone on. And when somebody tried calling, I mean, after she put the phone back on, we had all this. But we are monitoring the phone today, we promise.
It's on
So
now.
you can go ahead and call them again. That's
My
fine.
apologies. I'm so sorry. It's 575 519 5930.
Anyway, there's a lot of interesting stuff we're going to talk about today. Lots and lots
Yeah,
of
I
great
mean,
information.
there's a lot of articles that we've kind of gathered, and we had one from last week that we never got to. That was really, really important to us, because it explains a lot about what's going on,
See, one of the things that, having been in this community for as long as I have, I like to know why. Why am I the way that I am? Why are people the way that they are? This little cookie cutter scenario that the medical community is pushing as they push like a fast food type of thing, in my opinion, it really does not hit the core of the problem. I've always said gender dysphoria is like a cough is to a cold. There's a reason why we have this dysphoria. And if we really want to get down to the nitty gritty of it, we have to really break it down. So there's this article we found, and the article is actually called Transgenderism, an Unsupported Hypothesis, but with real risks. Because there's really no objective findings that states that somebody's actually born in the wrong body. In my opinion, that's just not the right scenario. We're not born in any wrong body. Our bodies are fine. It's the way we are raised, it's the way we cope with things, is the things that people want more than anything because they don't like the gender they were born as. So the medical community has provided you with answers that are not really answers. They're just a quick fix that in the end we're finding really fixes.
I think that, but anything that really points towards medicalization always should be looked at very seriously because, medicine isn't the answer in a lot of cases, in a lot of lives that, you have children with ADD, ADHD, and they're prescribing Ritalin and all these different drugs and medications. And we're finding out now that, kids are really becoming more affected in the negative way.
They're getting side effects because anything that's synthetic, your body really does not accept, and it actually negates it. And that negation is what we see as side effects. If you notice, every single prescription drug that you are given has side effects. And the side effects, most of the time, if not all of the time, are worse than the actual disease.
It's like, bar none, you watch TV, any kind of commercials come on, there are always these medical commercials, and they're like, and it may increase the risk of suicide or depression, it's like, why are these medications being given? And then they say, don't take them unless you absolutely need them and they're necessary, but they don't really point that out to you in the cutesy part of the commercial. Right. They always do it in the fast talking part,
right,
where they go,
small
they start talking really fast.
And there's a lot of these medications, especially the ones that are given to the trans community, that are off-label use. So they were never intended. Like synthetic estrogen was never intended for a male body. Synthetic testosterone was never intended for a female body. It wasn't even intended for the actual gender because they have a lot of side effects. So I know that people do this because they feel they have to. But what we're trying to do here is show individuals that are thinking about transition to really look and see that you really should not have to take this path, that there are other ways of dealing with this condition that we want to call gender dysphoria. You know, and in my understanding is that there's no fear or hatred of the gender you're born as. It's just the fear and the hatred of how you've been treated from the time you were little. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that in other articles, you know, how to deal with behaviors and how to deal with, and actually I wrote a blog about that. If you're friends with me on Facebook, I'm sure you've read it. When I visit my Maritza Cummings WordPress, that I've been writing a lot of articles. Anyway, let me go ahead and start off with this particular article. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, has once again shown his progressivism by promoting or promising to protect transgender people from hate speech with a new bill. This represents another step in the creation of gender identity as a legal, psychological, and moral reality.
However, neurosciences were unable to substantiate the claim that transgender people are women in men's bodies, vice versa. The emergence of gender identity as reality justifies irreversible surgery and hormonal treatment too often in pre-pubertal individuals, young children and teens, who are too young to make such major decisions.
Even in older patients, hormonal replacement therapy can cause serious physical and emotional problems. In short, although the neurosciences has not been able to confirm the hypothesis that transgender have a brain of the opposite sex, this assumption continues to legitimize laws and ambitious medical procedures.
Researchers have shown that transgender people have a brain that corresponds to their sex and not their gender identity. I don't think brain sex is really valid. I think brains are part of the human body.
Right.
And as such, my hand is not a female or male hand, it's just a hand.
Right.
You know, it's like the whole concept of, you know, we don't have a male kidney or female kidney, it's a kidney.
It's a kidney, but I think that there are certain specifications with the chromosomes and DNA and hormonal bathing that kind of gives like a liver. All the cells in the body have specifics, like there's kidney cells and there's liver cells, and you know, you can't give the same medication to a man that you can to a woman, not the same dosage.
But isn't that more hormonally based than it is on the?
That is, but the cells take on a life of its own depending on the programming, you know, and you cannot, and it's been noted that you can't give the same amount or type of medication for men and women. I mean, if you notice, certain products are male made and certain products are female made. And yes, a lot of it, but it does have to do with hormones.
Well, naturally,
No, go ahead.
Okay. Naturally, some have found a small difference, and it has encouraged some to believe that, wow, we discovered the area of gender identity. Sex was previously defined by biological criteria, the type of primary and secondary sexual characteristics, and a sex-differentiated brain.
Suddenly, according to some, sexual identity would be defined simply by only one of many regions of a tiny nucleus on one side of the brain, showing a partial feminization or masculinization based on a group of 8 transgenders. Even if we would find persistent differences in the transgender brain, that wouldn't mean that this difference would be linked to gender identity.
Since there are hundreds of measures that can be compared in the brain, it is not surprising that there is at least one that differs on average when comparing groups. In addition, the differences differed in each study. It would therefore be premature to conclude anything about one study. One of the articles mentioned cautions that it would be very speculative, quote unquote, to say that the answer to gender identity lies in the small difference found.
That the difference is casually linked to gender identity, assuming that such a thing exists and can be seen, is a speculation. It could be the area of any other trait unrelated to gender identity. For instance, MTF transgenders could have neuroticism in the female range, or the difference would mean nothing at all. Yet those who seek to justify their beliefs see it as an unambiguous sign that the transgender hypothesis holds, because they're holding on to every straw, every little bit.
That does not mean we will never find anything, but for now, after decades of research, it was only established that the transgender brain corresponds to their sex, all the rest being pure speculation. What is not speculative is the adverse effects of hormone treatment.
And we've talked about this in the past, when aging male bodies, they start having too much estrogen. And with the environment that we live is very estrogenic, there's a lot of disease, from prostate cancer to you name it. I mean, it's a slew that we talked about before.
Right.
So transgender people report feeling like the other sex. This is intriguing. How can we know how others feel? As a man, I personally have no idea how other men feel. And I'm not talking about me, the guy who wrote this article. He's a psychologist, by the way. In addition, even if the researchers had found that transgenders had a brain of the opposite sex, it would still be speculative to say that they feel like the opposite sex. Men and women have gonads that produce sex hormones that influence cognition, moods, and even brain anatomy.
Just one thing, the guy calling people transgenders, just I know it's whatever, but I just think it's bad grammar, because it's like there isn't transgenders.
Well, I know,
There's
but
transgender.
again, people can't be policing. I mean, it's a new word for a lot of people. It's just noun, whatever, like transgenderism or whatever.
I know, but I just can't help but think that it's not necessary to say transgenders as if it's like a
he's trying to make
transgender experience.
Plural of many transgender. That's the way I see it.
Anyway, it's offensive. I personally have no idea how it feels to live with such high and variable estrogen levels. Nobody knows how someone with a different personality or brain structure feels. It is impossible to not to make a parallel with those who identify as another ethnicity or animal species. I have no doubt that transgender people feel and believe themselves, but what is this belief based on?
Well, human beings have an incredible ability to feel anxiety, which leads them to investigate the possible reason behind those feelings. However, people do not have such an ease to determine the cause of the distress. Transgender people have extremely high rates of psychiatric disorders and other difficulties, like a troubled childhood. Most claim that this is because they are transgender or stigmatized, but no one has established that being transgender corresponds to any observable reality.
The treatment, which is more important to me than anything else this guy's saying, does not improve their life drastically either. You could say, well, why not if it helps? But that would be a lie. People with high levels of estrogen, such as girls with borderline personality disorder, have extremely volatile moods. So it's not a brilliant idea to give estrogen to people that already suffer from psychiatric disorders. The attempted suicide rate after treatment is from 32% to 41%. In another study, the suicide rate after treatment is 19 times higher than the rest of the population.
So, according to a recent article published in the International Journal of Psychiatry, the most rigorous study showed that the condition of transgender worsens after treatment. Not gets better, but worsens. Many studies have found improvement have serious methodological problems, such as a study on Danish transgender that lost 10% of its group due to death at an average age of 53 years. That's pretty worrisome.
Throughout the ages, there were various attributions to explain anxiety. After the publication of the book Sybil in 1973, following the example of the protagonist, many women reported having developed multiple personalities. Many psychologists then use hypnosis to recover repressed memories of sexual abuse. The numbers of cases went from 200 before publication to 1.5% of the US population in 2013, so a few millions.
The average number of reported personality rose from 2 to 13 within a decade. Similarly, people with anorexia are convinced that their distress is caused by their obesity, although they are, by definition, below an adequate weight. The explanation of the distress is not based on an accurate observation.
In short, historically, there have been a myriad of explanations for distress, which were not supported by objective data. People have very little insight to understand the origins of their behavior. They are also influenced by the suggestions of professionals. In a classic study, researchers modified photos and convinced the participants that they had been taken in the youth of the participants. Half of the participants spontaneously recounted memories about this photo, believing it to be themselves.
So the fact that transgender people think of themselves as the opposite sex does not mean they are right. There could also be other reasons for being transgender, apart from a misinterpreted anxiety. Some men feel sexual excitement when personalizing a woman, and thus transform into a woman. Even those who oppose the most to this theory concede that this is true in some cases. Feeling good when personifying a woman does not necessarily mean that one is a woman.
In conclusion, while it does not matter to me personally how people identify themselves, the phenomenon of legitimization of transgenderism leads to dangerous and simply false solutions. If an anorexic girl thinks she is obese, doctors do not prescribe her substances to make her lose weight. Before making transgenderism a legal reality, as suggested by Justin Trudeau, or treating people with hormones that have many adverse effects, one is entitled to question the objectivity of the phenomenon. I wish the best to transgender people, but I also think about the thousands of people with psychiatric problems who will be encouraged to take hormones that present a danger to their physical and psychological health. After all, it is the role of science to test potentially dangerous assumptions.
And looking at the video we saw earlier today with Sparkles, Princess, what's her name? Princess Jules. Total breakdown. A person who's had SRS, a person who's been on hormones for quite a long time, meaning that their body is void of the testosterone that requires for a healthy, healthy body, healthy mind, healthy everything. And these breakdowns are something that are often seen behind closed doors,
right?
Because people aren't. And I understand, there's a lot of trans individuals that are very new to the transition. They are actually, become, like you were saying earlier, the word transgenders is offensive. Why is that offensive? I've been in this for 15 years. It's like the word tranny became offensive to trans people. It's like, you got to really take a closer look at why people are being offended by a word or by adding an S to a word. Instead of them really looking in, it's like, what is really making me so upset? Why am I always in turmoil? Why, as a person, I'm always fighting the mirror and people around me? I think that's what really needs to be looked at.
I mean, I just think the word transgenders is just like, I've heard people personally use it, like in personal messages, and go, I have no problem with transgenders, but it's my right to use the bathroom of my choice. And it's like, okay, it's just like, it's like as if they're like some kind of freakish.
Well, no, it's not. I don't think that's what people are seeing.
But that's how it's implied.
But that is the transgender person's own mental thing. It's like they always think the world is out to get them, and somebody
was out to get them back in May
because they're over pushing, they're jamming this down people's throats.
I just think there's a better way of dealing with it. People can be a little bit more,
People are still trying to understand the whole concept that their father is becoming a woman or that their sons and daughters are changing their gender. It's hard enough for society to understand this. So what if they make a plural or whatever out of a word? Those are the smallest things that we have to look at. And that's the problem I totally believe that the community is facing. They're battling things that they shouldn't be battling.
It is, but telling people that they don't need to be battling it is not going to make it any easier for them. They need to understand and realize it on their own.
Yes, but enabling people, sometimes people don't.
If I say that the word transgenders is offensive to the trans community, I personally have the right to feel that way. It's not like.
But explain the why. Why is it offensive to add an S to a word? The person is trying to pluralize. He's talking about many transgender people.
Because the people that use it usually are the Christian right. People that
this person that's writing this is not a Christian right. It's just,
They It may be a very conservative person, and
That's
usually
another
is
thing
used
that I
by
have a problem with.
conservatives.
Michael Hughes, anybody that goes against the protocol that the trans community wants to see is always negated. It's always, they try to like make, what's the word I'm looking for?
Discount.
Discount the words
Discredit.
because they're this, they're that, and the
Follow the
other.
cue.
Yeah.
You're talking about?
Yeah. Anybody that doesn't follow the trans narrative to a T or has another opinion, the trans community always tries to discredit.
Well, that's a different story. I mean, we're talking about a man, you know, who has a different historical background in his treatment of transgender individuals at Johns Hopkins. What I'm talking about is just a word that is used. You know, it's like,
Well, I mean,
I just think it's, you know, I just think words carry meanings, and when people use the word transgenders, it's like it's almost like I don't really, you know, it's like I don't know. It just, to me, it comes across as.
Well, but I thought that the article had a lot of great information in that.
I do too. I think the article has a lot of information telling people that hormones are dangerous and that, you know, that you need to really look at.
But see,
what
you
it is.
did, the focus was on that one word, and that's what happens with trans people. They just focus on the one word that pissed them off, and they couldn't even get anything else that's being talked about.
I didn't honestly get a whole lot more out of that conversation, other than the fact that I agree that hormones are dangerous, and that they should be, you know, they're not approved by the Federal Drug Administration as being a safe medication for any of us transgender.
And there's a lot of other things that he spoke about here.
Women either.
A lot of very important things that, you know, there's no way of telling somebody how they feel, you know, and the analysis with the anorexic girl who thinks that they're obese. I mean, there's a lot of but again, you know, the community doesn't want to actually see that, you know, they just want to be told what they want to hear. And,
you know, I think it speaks to the next article we're going to read about, because I'm very familiar with this part of the experience of being trans, and there's so many people that, you know, they like to brush it off and like put this in the fetish side of, you know, this is like, oh, am I really trans if I have these thoughts, or if I get sexual pleasure, or if I do this or that before, and am I really transgender if I cross-dress? I mean, stuff like that. And it's like, you know, this is all not just some evolved personality. This is a sexuality that really exists in humanity. You know, I think that when we start taking off the layers of filth that people want to place on fetishists, and, you know, they always have, like we were talking about, a tier level of hierarchy within the transgender umbrella, and cross-dressers are always at the bottom. And, you know, this article is going to talk about some of that, but some of the terms that we wanted to introduce you guys to, or reacquaint you guys with, are terms such as the word femophilia, which is an erotic love of femininity, and it refers only to sexual behavior and makes no claim to understand its cause or deeper consequences. The sexual desire for femininity and its resulting sexual activity.
Now, I wanted to point out that the individual who wrote this article, and what's the website called again?
Oh gosh, I can't remember, but I know the guy's name is Felix Conrad.
Right, and he has been struggling himself with being transgender, and a lot of these words, because he didn't like the word AGP, and a lot of people in the trans community get totally offended by the word. But there's a new wave of thinking in a lot of the individuals in the trans community who are accepting the fact that, yes, like you mentioned, it's a sexuality. Yes, there is a gratification of creating this woman that, let's call it an enema, which is what a lot of male individuals, if not all, have a female persona deep inside of them.
A-N-I-M-A.
Yeah, not enema as when you go in the bathroom.
Enema.
And it's been known throughout history, and a lot of individuals would play the role out in theater and things of that nature, cross-dress, just to bring out that female that we have inside. And a lot of it also has to do with the connection that you want to make or didn't have with your mother as a baby all the way through. So you're trying to recreate the situation. Well, he uses these words, and cross-dreamer is another word that he used, which is also another term for AGP. A little, I guess it has a little better sound to it, and it actually fits people in the trans community very well. It's cross-dreamers, the phenomenon that some people get aroused by the idea of being the other sex. And I know a lot of people, they just don't want to admit that. They want to go with,
they're going to get offended.
Yeah, born in the wrong body, blah, blah, blah. And I truly believe there's nothing wrong with our bodies. I truly believe that are just coping mechanisms that we use to try to deal with the fact that we were told when we were younger, you're wrong for acting the way that you act. So you start to hate yourself and you create this other persona within you and allow it out. And the other term is autogynephilia, which is the love of oneself as a woman. So in saying that, the article by Felix, it's called "Why Are Women's Clothes So Prevalent in Cross-Gender Psychology?" Because one of the things I've always as I studied more and more about trans women and started hanging around and dating and being with trans women, I was this thing about it's the clothing. I mean, they have this thing about clothing, and the makeup and the wig, and just, they try to recreate women in what they in their minds think a woman should look like or should be like. But unlike the people in the ancient times who used to take women's roles, and also men's role, they shared both roles. It wasn't about the clothing back then as much as it is now. And I see it time and time again on Facebook, pictures of a bra and a panties and all sorts of faces and poses. And it's like, is that what women do? I mean, so anyway.
I think it's interesting too, though, that think about it, trans women who are watching this, if society all of a sudden said, we don't really care if women wear makeup at all. We don't care if women wear the sexy clothes and all that stuff. We don't care about all that. Not unlike what a current pop artist is doing. Her name is Alicia Keys, and she has a hashtag called No Makeup, and she is wearing no makeup on her face. She was at the Video Music Awards the other day, no makeup. She was on The Voice the other day, no makeup. Would it be as appealing to some of you when you realize that you wouldn't necessarily be needed to wear these accoutrements of femininity in order to, make yourself a woman, because women wouldn't wear makeup? Where would you be? What would you think?
Or what if all of a sudden 1984 kicks in, and everyone has to wear the same uniform, male and female wearing the same attire. Makeup is disposed. You're not allowed to use it anymore. They're not allowed. Petroleum's gone out the window. We're living in a different world where there's no separation between male and female, and everybody has to wear the same uniform. Would it still be appealing to identify as a woman?
I don't think that for some that it would actually be appealing, because we were just watching Princess Jules, and the only way she could cope with what was going on in her depressed mind was to make her face up and look all presentable to the camera. Whereas it's I would love to have just seen her with no makeup, just being brutally honest and just candid in front of everybody, instead of painting herself up like some porcelain doll and presenting herself in a way that she was trying to bare her soul, but she was still hiding behind her coping.
That's where and again, being in this for the past 15 years, I've been around a lot of trans men and women. I see right through the veil. I see exactly what's going on, and people might take me as harsh, as transphobe or whatever else. It's not that. I'm seeing everything as it is, and I'm trying to get people to remove the veil from their eyes and to really dig deep, open up your hearts and heal yourself. This other facade that we're trying to put on is not helping anyone. Being upset at the world for adding an S to a name, or calling us trannies, or or, you know, using improper pronouns. That's not the problem. The problem is something deeper that we're hiding, that we're afraid to show. And changing your gender is not going to solve your problem, because gender is not everything in this world. And I know it is for many of you. And I know that your dysphoria is real to you, but there's something deeper. And all I want people to do is really look deep. Stop hiding. Stop lying. Stop, you know, ramming this down people's throats, because the pendulum is going to go the opposite direction. The more you keep pushing, the harder people are going to push back. Anyway, so point A of this particular article is: a human is born a male. Point B, 40 years later, he wants to chop his balls off and change his name to Tammy. The question is, what the hell happened between point A and point B? Where should we start if we want to understand this phenomenon? And people, I mean, you have a guy who married, has kids, all very macho throughout their entire life, and all of a sudden one day, boom, decides to be Matilda. I mean, people are going, what?
That's a nice thing.
Yeah, what's that? What's that, Matilda? What the heck is going on? You know, what happened? What did that trauma all of a sudden just flare up? You know, the guy got tired of all this responsibility and can't cope anymore. Like Sparkles, I can't, I have no cope. I thought I'd be stronger, but I'm not strong. It's like, it's not the gender, it's the problem. It's the fact that this young boy who now transitioned to be a trans woman had difficulty coping throughout life and still has difficulty coping. The makeup, the SRS, none of that helped them cope. It's made them even weaker.
Yeah, because now they don't have the strength, that inner fortitude to draw from. That, you know, honestly, the gonads and your balls or your penis are, for trans women, are much more than just a physical, you know, enabler for having sex or pleasure. I mean, it's actually a part of your body, an integral part of who you are. And when you remove that, it's like you remove a piece of your soul out of your body. You know, there's much more to our physical bodies than just simply the physical definition for what they're used for. You know,
it's fortitude. It's your chi. It's your strength. It's what allows your immune system to go up. I mean, estrogen is a very, very harmful hormone, even for genetically born females. And then when you're dealing with an environment that is so estrogenic, and the production of estradiol that's coming from your fat cells, I mean, you're looking at diseases galore, imbalance of your body. You're looking at your mental health going wacky. You're looking at your physical health going wacky. Mm-hmm. And most people don't want to hear that, because they're too involved in having fun and looking at all the changes and all the surgeries that they're doing. But there's going to come a time when you're going to see yourself in the hospital, you know, bleeding thick blood out of your urine, and things that are happening to you because of, number one, the turmoil that you're putting yourself through. Never mind all the chemicals that you're putting in your body and all the surgeries you're putting your body through. But the mental turmoil of constantly fighting with yourself in that mirror and the world.
I mean, the constant need for suppressing yourself. Like, trans women really struggle with their voice. Yeah. A lot of them do. I mean, they work at it really hard, and they go to voice classes and, you know, all these things. And it's like they repress their body from functioning in the way that it was naturally made to function. So what ends up happening is that all this repression that you build up inside of yourself, even in changing your voice and speaking like, you know, way up here or something like,
or the nasal type of,
I mean,
what was
like,
it, we still called that a character today, I can't even remember.
Yeah, like Kermit the Frog.
Hi, my name's so-and-so, and I am, you know.
And then they're like, but let me show you what my voice used to sound like. And then they're like, hi, my name's Bob. Yeah. You know, it's like,
can you imagine putting your vocal cords through that strain
all day long, day out,
and making your body's posture and movement be something that your body is not used to? It is fake. So in that fake stage, day in, day out, what is it that you're trying to prove? Who is it that you're trying to convince?
Yeah,
that's very harmful to yourself. You know.
So yeah, it's really, it's one of those things where, I mean, if repression is a part of the human experience, that is a positive thing.
No, it's not. It's,
I mean,
it's a deadly thing, you know. And the lies. That's, you know, another death. Was it in Thailand where?
Yeah, a trans woman was murdered.
You know, because it's that constant.
And then they don't blame the trans woman for being murdered. And I do not condone, you know, murder in any sense of the word. But, you know, there's so many times when these trans women are sex workers and they put themselves into precarious situations and very dangerous, you know, situations in hotel rooms and, you know, egging men on and leading men on to believe that they are naturally women, or even if they're not, that they would lure them to having sex, and then the people change their minds. And I mean,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot, because you're dealing with somebody else questioning their sexuality. And then you even have individuals that marry, you know, this trans person, believing they were genetically born female. They find out, and then, I mean, some guy, did some terrible things to the then wife. And but you know, it's like, we need to be truthful with self. We need to stop trying to kill the other side, the side that you were born as, and blend in somehow some beautiful human being that you are, without having to hurt yourself, without having to go through this precarious surgeries that are going to harm you in the end. The human body needs to be intact the way it is. We're not meant to cut out, add, or do all these crazy things to it. Anyway, let's go ahead and
so for many femophiliacs, cross-dreamers, and late onset transsexuals, the first cross-gender experience is what psychiatrists call a transvestite experience. So let's begin by asking ourselves what transvestite is and how it relates to problems with gender identity.
There are two definitions of transvestite. A savvy one, relevant and necessary to readers of this book, which is, this guy writes a blog, but he has a book, and a dumbed down version for members of the public and the psychiatric profession.
The dumbed down version is this. A transvestite is a person who derives sexual stimulation from wearing the clothes of the opposite gender.
The savvy one is, transvestite is a person who derives sexual stimulation from wearing the clothes of the opposite gender. However, this is just a part of a deeper sexual fantasy about being a woman, which in turn is part of his deeper female self, which may or may not develop as he grows older. Note that female self, every single man on this planet, as macho as he may be, has a female self inside. Why? Because when we first started off in life, we have both the ability to become male or female. I also, in my spiritual believe that our creator is both male and female, the yin and the yang, night and day. There's a duality in everything on this realm. That includes in our masculine or feminine expression. So every human being has the capability of that.
So for our purposes, there isn't really such a thing as a transvestite. There's only transvestite behavior. Wearing women's clothes is just one of various ways in which cross-dreamers stimulate themselves sexually in their broader erotic disposition to being a woman. They might actually be turned on by stroking their chest and imagining that they were breasts, or by having sex as a woman. Saying he is a transvestite is like saying a heterosexual having sex in the missionary position is a missionarist, and like trying to define his sexuality by the fact he has sex in the missionary position. We all know that this is just one position and part of his heterosexuality.
And it's funny
for that graphic example.
Yeah, well, you know, sexuality and human behavior is something that's so complex, and people just try to simplify it, and they try to hide because of shame. I mean, every single cross-dresser has felt shame cross-dressing, you know, and even when people masturbate, they feel shame in masturbating. So they want to quantify things and make themselves be holier than thou, and that's why the "I am really a woman," you know, mentality, because in their mind, that's the only way they could really cope with what they're doing, you know. Before we examine further, however, this early erotic behavior towards the feminine, let's just think for a moment about the clothing of the opposite gender. Why does it start with that? And why does women's clothing exert such a powerful and lasting hold over the femophiliac erotic interest?
We do not know the exact scientific reason, but I will relate to you recent thinking on the subject. Hemophiliacs inherit their erotic taste genetically. Quite literally, there is a gene, which means that their principal erotic interest will be to behave and look like a woman. At some point in the child's development, this gene is activated, and the first thing he does is to identify the female in his environment.
Now, because we're not living on a desert island paradise where everyone is naked, he can only identify by their secondary sexual characteristics of vagina, and similarly, due to concealment and differences in size, breasts are not so striking either. Also, in a world of gender equality where men and women have the same jobs and both change their baby diapers and do the housework, there's less demarcation of behavior and roles. Unlike the Indians in the old days, there were more, females did certain things, males did certain things. In fact, there are not as many feminine identifiers in the environment as you would think, which means the infant locks on to the most visible striking signs of womanhood available, their clothing.
And of course, clothes that are markedly different will make more of an impression. Therefore, a bright pink satin dress screams much more of the female than a pair of jeans. And this would be even more so if the process occurs at any age. At an age that is so young, the child is not sufficiently observant to notice minor details like makeup, and only registers great swaths of moving, shining color.
Thus, the child, directed by the gene he inherited, has initiated a process which will result in an erotic association with clothing. It is the environment clearest characteristic of the goal of his desire, womanhood. Furthermore, because this is the first erotic stimuli that the child is exposed to, it is the strongest, and despite the addition of subsequent erotic stimuli, as he develops breast, vagina, etc., it often remains the strongest. And I wanted to say, it's like, generally, a lot of women don't even like dressing up. A lot of women don't even like wearing the frilly in the dresses. I mean, yesterday we were watching one of the CrossFit stars there, Brooke, who doesn't like wearing frilly feminine stuff. So when I see trans women that all they want to do is wear dresses and all they want to do is wear, and it's like, what are you doing? It's like, it's not really that they feel they're born in the wrong body. It's like, they're just, this is explained to the T,
Well, if you have a problem with that theory, then you could choose a more practical explanation. What the individual seeks in his fantasy is to cross gender. Clearly, however, he cannot just walk up to a chest of drawers, take out a vagina, and put it on. Clothing, however, is an easy jump to the other gender. Open a drawer, take out an item of clothing, and hey, cross-to-changer, you have a cross-gender experience. Clothing has therefore a magic force to the individual who is interested in being the other sex.
Whatever the cause, many individuals who have a crisis of gender identity later in life began their cross-gender behavior with clothes of the opposite gender, and this behavior was sexually gratifying. And while it may not seem overly erotic when a young child does this, it is quite clear from that evidence that very young children do have an erotic drive. At this point, I do not want to enter into any debate. All we need to establish is that as soon as they develop a full erotic drive in puberty, cross-dressing and cross-gender fantasies will be an important part of that drive. And we can say that their first significant cross-gender experience are sexual in nature.
And we don't mean you can have a sexual experience without it being erotic.
Or without it being the genital type of masturbating type of, it's just the fact that you are believing that you are a woman and you're wearing this particular clothing, that gives you joy, that makes you high, that gives you some sort of release, and could be release of dopamine in your brain, which is also considered some sort of like sexual experience. It doesn't mean that everybody goes and masturbates although there are people that do that. Not everybody does that. It's just like this gratification, It's like a nicotine high. When you take a drag of a cigarette, you get this nicotine high. Well, when a cross-dreamer or somebody transgender wears the opposite clothes from the clothes they were used to, they get this high because now they're like allowing that female side of them to come out.
I mean, I know in my own personal experience, back when, I was 5 or 6 years old, or 8 and stuff, and I was cross-dressing and, at my mom's house in the closet. There was it wasn't like some erotic thrill of any kind, but there was a dopamine release of excitement of knowing that I had crossed a gender line, that by me wearing that particular piece of clothing, that it made me want to do things that I wouldn't normally have done. Like I wouldn't have gone to throw a baseball outside with my mom's dress on, but I would feel comfortable, looking at pictures, of her in wedding album and that kind of thing. I mean, or imagining myself as such and such or so and so.
Right, and can it clearly be safely to say, and you wrote something about this on your blog, and I'll link your blog link that you've been writing, the fact that your mother and sister would go inside the dressing room and leave you outside. You were sitting there just touching the dresses, and I'm sure that in your little mind you said you wish you could have gone in there. You felt left out. Your mother and your sister were sharing an experience and left you out. So
yeah, I mean, I would like be waiting there for them. I'm like, why can't I
go in there and try clothes with them and have the fun that they're having?
And
I want to be a woman too.
Yeah.
And then when they were out and about, you went into their closet, you took out their clothes, and you gave yourself that satisfaction. Because as kids, they tell us you can't do something, or they don't let us do something, the more we want to do it. So hence began the thrill, and you consider that as something of greatness, that your sister and your mother were trying on clothes. Well, then when you wore that, then you felt yourself gratified.
I would say that was definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
Because you want to identify with things that you like. And there were parts of boyhood that I didn't necessarily like, so.
But again, those are stereotypes and stereo things. There's nothing being said that a man can't wear women's clothing without it being shameful, without it being, because in our cultures, especially Hispanic cultures, boys will be boys and girls will be girls. A girl walks this way, a boy is supposed to act this way. Boys wear this type of clothing, women wear this type of clothing. And, you can't really do that, because then you're going to create a seed in the head there, like, well, I'm going to go against the grain, I'm going to wear what I want. And then when you get to do it, it's like you got away with it, and you got away with it, so you felt a surge of something, and you like that surge. It's like taking a hit of crack or taking a hit of marijuana and getting this rush. And that's why I consider the cross-dressing, the transgender experience, an addiction of sorts, because the first time you did it, it felt good. You wanted to feel that again and again, not just you, but I'm saying people that engage in that, and so forth and so on.
Well, so furthermore,
Furthermore,
while they may have successful heterosexual sex, their principal fantasies will always be about crossing gender, and that will continue to be the case for the rest of their lives as testosterone-powered males.
And it's funny, he talks about it because we read something a while back in the CrossDreamer website that transgender individual transitioned. I think, did they have a full surgery and their testosterone level dropped completely? And then all of a sudden, 10 years later,
it's like that whole concept of that dopamine release just wasn't really happening
anymore,
because they didn't have this sexual drive. So the things that excited them in the past, because they had basically done what they did and had surgeries and stuff and removed their testicles and everything, they realized that that they were lacking sexually in how they could enjoy and identify with themselves. So they went on testosterone supplementation.
Yeah. And then started doing the AGP cycle again.
Right.
So that kind of tells you there's something.
Recreated that drive again, because now the testosterone was back in the system.
And then that AGP thing started all over again. So, born in the wrong body, sexuality and pleasure about thinking as oneself as a female. So these are things that people really need to, look into. Like, is it really going to solve your problems? Or is it just going to alleviate it? And then once you get to where you think you need to get to and all the surgeries are done, you're going to find yourself empty again.
I mean, even April Ashley, who was a trans woman for many years, had surgery back in the 60s, I think it was, or yeah, something like that. I mean, she was on television on an internet web show recently, an interview, and she's like not really
Promoting this at all.
promoting it at all.
Like, don't do it.
You know, and she was gorgeous. I mean, she was a Vogue model.
Yeah.
She was in movies with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and stuff. And this person, you know, living a life as stealth, repressing, constantly hiding,
Got caught.
was found out,
Yeah.
as many do, even the most beautiful of them. And
Work stopped. They stopped
Yeah.
hiring her, and then now lives by herself alone. Because that's another thing that I always say to people: if you're going to embark on this life, and it's your choice, realize that not only are you going to have a life full of turmoil, health problems, you're most likely going to end up alone. And that's pretty sad, especially as we age. I mean, you know.
But, you know, it's not really surprising that most of us do end up alone, because our world revolves around us.
It's a very small nuclei, and your world gets even smaller because no one wants to be around somebody that's attached to a mirror, attached that every time you're going to go out, it's like, oh my God. It's like no one really wants to deal with that. You know, people want people that are able to give, not just take, you know, and yeah. Anyway, not talking of the rest of their lives, for the rest of their lives as testosterone powered males. Now, talking of the rest of their lives, what will happen is that some hemophiliacs will develop and explore their deeper female self. This may range from little more than an alter ego to the creation of a new identity. When this identity becomes important to them, they will question it.
Well, talking about, you know, creating an alter ego and the creation of a new identity, I mean, that is very common along the lines of so many MTFs and FTMs as well. You know, here you have an FTM who's supposedly now very comfortable living as his actual self, right?
Mm-hmm.
A person who has been able to cross gender and embrace his natural masculinity, and he's freaked out when the plumber is coming to the house. I mean,
Worrying about
what do I do?
what do I wear? I live here by
Oh my
myself because
gosh,
the wife
is
works.
this guy enough to wear? I mean,
He's a
do I look
stay-at-home
good enough?
parent, you know, and the wife works, he just stays home, and they had some sort of deal that they had to call a plumber. Well, he's freaking out. Am I wearing? Am I
guy enough?
Am I guy enough? What should I wear?
Am I gonna pull this off?
Yeah. And then the guy gets there and asks him all sorts of questions. He has no clue, and he's getting all stressed out. He calls the wife because he's the man of the house, but the wife is the one that knows about the plumbing, right?
But any man would never call the wife.
Of course not.
Would never. It's like, you know, if they don't know anything about the water heater, which a lot of guys really don't, they're gonna go, I don't really know I don't know what size the water heater is, but you're welcome to check it yourself.
Right.
Instead,
Freaking out.
they're all freaked out about these little nuances of quote unquote manhood interpreted by a person who was never socialized as a male. And they think that all men know about how to change the oil, how to fix, you know, the plumbing, how to adjust this or that in the house. I mean, it's like there's a lot of guys who don't know that.
And if you don't know that, a guy's typical thing to do, because a guy's not going to admit it. So he's going to go to Google. You know, like I've had to see myself in situations where I've had to fix certain things that, hey, I wasn't socialized as a guy. My father never taught me how to do these things, but I learned. I don't freak out about it. But, you know, this is what I'm seeing in a lot of transgender individuals is that they want to play that role. It's like a play make-believe.
But it's a natural born role that they're supposed to like already embody, but
they're not, because it's not real. It's all about the what do you call it? The aesthetics. It's all about the dressing. It's all about saying I am this and I am that. But when it comes down to brass tacks, they're not. They were socialized as such. These are individuals that are in their late 30s and 40s are transitioning, and they really have no clue what it is to be a man. If they're born a woman, if you're born a man, you have no clue what it is to be a woman. except what physically you're seeing, the wigs, the dress.
Hey, we got a call.
Okay, there we go.
We have a call.
Okay, no, you have to accept it first.
Hello.
You have to let it
To
through.
accept, press 1. Okay.
Okay, put on speaker.
Yes, I will in a second. Hello, caller.
Oh, no, no, go right ahead.
Oh, not at all. Hold that for a second. Let me turn, please.
Go. Hey, Jonas, how you doing?
Hi, Jonas.
Go right ahead. We're doing fantastic,
Yeah.
thank you. You don't, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you, but I'm calling from Belgium.
You're calling from Belgium.
Wow.
That's pretty far away from Florida.
Yes, because there's little information to find on the subject that I have to look all over the world.
So what was your question that you had for us?
Well, I wonder, how do you differentiate between the false self and the genuine female side of your person?
Well, as I was explaining earlier, every man and woman has a male and a female side. And I think depending on the way we were raised, if we were suppressed, that one side, let's say yourself born as a man, and your female persona has been probably trying to come out for the longest time, that doesn't mean that you are a female. Just, you know, or I don't, because my male persona was trying to come out doesn't mean that I'm a male. Just we have both a male and a female side. We live in a society that is so gender boxed that people are not allowed to express their femininity and masculinity in a healthy fashion. What we're seeing in the trans community, this whole thing about you have to transition, you have to have surgeries, and you have to have hormones, is a very poor coping skill, a very poor answer. It's actually very abnormal, in my opinion. And I think that by allowing yourself to express and by starting to know the person that you are inside, you're going to really be able to help yourself a lot more than by following the status quo that we're seeing in the world.
So that was basically what you were doing as Maritza, because she said you enjoyed being able to switch back and forth.
Exactly. When I was younger, you know, I was able to go back and forth, but I was told that my masculine side was wrong, that I was born a girl and I should only act like a girl and dress like a girl. And I used to like to dress more like boys. And then when I found out about being transgender, I automatically connected with that and thought, well, here's my answer. Because all my life I was made to feel like I was wrong for being the way that I was.
I think it also becomes stronger the more we repress it. That it starts hurting and comes OCD-like to come out.
Yeah, of course, it's going to become stronger if you oppress it, and you shouldn't oppress it.
If you do repress it, it's one of those things that's just going to become even stronger inside of you. So what we need to do is we need to be aware of it, and we need to give it a freedom to exist without it taking over our lives in a way that would impact it for, you know, future generations, and, you know, with people that we love and people that care for us. So I think that when we feed that other part of ourselves too much, that part overpowers the real part of our lived experience, and then it consumes us so that it becomes like a virtual Pandora's box that cannot be closed. Once we allow it to grow to this monstrous size, it overcomes us, it overcomes the person that we were, the person that we want to be, then takes over and takes control. So that's just one of the things that I know for me in my own personal experience has been the case. But I think one of the healthy things to understand is that we can't let ourselves be given in to the fact that men can't be sensitive, men can't be, you know, kind and thoughtful, and men can't be, you know, open for, you know, emotional influence and things like that. I mean, I think that, once we realize that those aren't womanly traits. I mean, there was a woman who commented on my Facebook page the other day, married, and she said, some of the strongest characteristics about my husband is that he's a sweet, loving, gentle man. And those are beautiful traits that we have as human beings, and men possess those traits, and they're not just a female type of a personality trait, so that we could kind of rewire what we've been taught, what we've been told. Oh, boys don't act this way, girls act this way, and then we think that we have to follow some stereotype.
So what makes you think that you were born in the wrong body, or that you shouldn't be the way you are? What was the first inclination of you feeling that?
Well, my first memories were that I liked girl movies, like Vienna also described like Little Mermaid, and I liked that too. I always identified with the female characters, but it wasn't ruling my life at that point. But when I got older and I got in high school, I was ridiculed and bullied a lot, and so I was always envying the girls because they were getting a lot of attention, and guys who didn't give me attention and friendship always were friendly to them. So I was always wondering what would it be like to be one of them.
So that right there is your answer. That right there is your answer. You felt left out, just like Lena felt left out, that she wasn't allowed to go inside the dressing room with her mother and her sister. You felt left out, that girls were being treated nice, and that you weren't allowed to play with the girls, and you weren't allowed to like the things that girls like because you were told that was wrong. You were told that you're damaged, and your self-esteem became low. So now all of a sudden the trans agenda has this answer for you. Well, you are a girl, then become a woman. And it's not that you are a girl or a woman. You're just a wonderful, sensitive young or individual young man, and you should be allowed to like what you like. You should be allowed to dress the way you want to dress. You should be able to express the way you want to express without having to hurt yourself. What I can tell you is the mistake that I made, and at least I have something wonderful. I met a beautiful person in my life because of this mistake, but not every trans person is going to be so lucky. Not everyone finds a rainbow. Say that again?
You mentioned that people actually on the show earlier, and I watched a documentary last week of older transitioners, and they were all alone in the end, because we said a man doesn't want a trans woman, he wants a real woman.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, those stories of late transitioners, I mean, I appreciate you, giving us some of those comments and stuff like that on our Facebook wall. But, they paint such a beautiful picture of transition. And if you look at, the different young, early transitioners that are, happen to be beautiful faces already as men, and they transition to be women. I mean, drag queens are beautiful and can be. So,
but it doesn't mean that they're women.
It doesn't mean that they're women.
Yeah.
But, the fact is that there are so many stories of late transitioners that aren't being told, that are, once they've done this, once they've gone this far, and if they've gone as far as to do sexual reassignment surgeries, they really have nothing to offer to share, because for them to share anything positive about their experience, I mean, anything negative about their experiences would really mess with their psyche, because they've basically, I mean, it's like if you tell a man, that you did it wrong, I mean, that's like, I remember telling my dad that he did something wrong in front of people, and you don't do that. So the same thing exists in trans women. I mean, they're never going to admit that they blew it. They might tell you in person.
This is a free call from What's Call. Enjoy your day. Goodbye.
Oh, it's from Belgium.
Yeah.
Belgium. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Sorry it got cut off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where, these people have a story to tell, and we do wish that if you're a transitioner and have been, transitioned as long as Mark or longer, I mean, please, we encourage you to give your story. Tell us about it. I mean,
be truthful.
Give us the truth. I mean, if you are struggling if transition is something that made your world even smaller, I mean, it's really beneficial to others to just tell the truth, you know, because other people are just gonna follow in your footsteps, and they're gonna trip around and not know, you know, the truth, and they're gonna find themselves in this place, and most of the time it's not gonna end well. So I mean,
That's why we do what we do. You know, and I know Lena still struggles, and it's very evident. I mean, I've been in this for years, and I'm back and forth, and I understand it, and I've seen a lot of people in the community, how they struggle, how they're fighting with a lot of, you know, their own inner demons. And, you know, I've had friends that wish they were dead now after transitioning, beautiful transitioners. They've lost their soul. They realize that after the end of everything, after the years go by, that you really have accomplished absolutely nothing. And there's no need for anyone to hurt themselves, to be able to express and live your life the way you feel you want to live. If you're a man and you feel you're feminine and you want to be sensitive and you like girl things and you like dressing as a woman, do it. What we need to do is teach society to change. We don't need to change to fit society. Society needs to change to fit us. And the more of us that come out, the more of us that talk about it, the more that we let, you know, our kids express without giving them a label that they're defective, they were born in the wrong body. That's only feeding the low self-esteem even further. And we're offering people a solution that's not for real.
And the thing is, you know, we were told, why don't you guys just do a really happy-go-lucky little channel where, you know, everybody can get together and we can all talk about happy things. And it's like,
that's not the truth. That happens in the beginning when you're first couple of years. And, you know, there's a lot of diseases that stem from taking cross-sex hormones, a lot of diseases that stems from the self-hatred. You know, every cell in your body is feeling how much you hate yourself. And you only love yourself if you actually change. And that's not love. You know, that's not love at all. When you're trying to change your body to fit with the reality that you feel that you are, that's not love. That's self-hatred. Self-mutilation is self-hatred. And I know you don't want to hear that, but someone's got to speak up. Someone, and I feel like having been in this for so many years and what I've done to myself, what I've seen other people do to themselves, someone has to speak out. You know, and again, it's your life. I'm not telling you what to do, but please weigh out, you know, the actual, what do you call it? The ramifications and the things that are.
Well, there are lots of people that are going to give you the most popular answer, and you can find people on Reddit that'll do that for you. You can find people on Facebook that are going to applaud your efforts and things. We just want to be realistic. We just want to be honest. And, you know, Mark has a certain angle to come from. I have another angle to come from because, you know, this affected more than just me. This infected, and the word is right, infected, people that love me, that loved me, and that really wanted me to be a part of their lives forever.
Yeah, and for those of you who are saying, well, they loved you, they'll love you unconditionally no matter what. No, because these people did not sign up for this type of ride.
Yeah,
then his wife signed up to marry a man, signed up to have 5 children, and to grow old together. That's what she signed up for, not for this other. You know, and that's what most of you are failing to see. People are not going to be forced to accept your reality.
And they're going to say, I know people are going to say, but they need to understand that I've been repressed all my life. I'm finally able to be free. I'm finally able to be authentic to myself. And it's like, your authenticity is a lie to other people because they thought that what you were presenting to them was your true self. And if you want to really be honest about it, you were being your true self. Now, you may have had a side of you that wasn't being exposed and that you were embarrassed of and ashamed of, like I was, but don't fool yourself to think that you were like in some kind of a, you know, like in some kind of a costume that you were wearing. You weren't wearing a costume. You were born male. You lived a male's life. You were socialized as a male. And if you had a family, and if you had children, and if you, I mean, you had real experiences, your buddies in the army knew you, as the person that you were, and you want to say, well, I was covering up my femininity by doing all the masculine things. Like, no, that's not all that you were doing. There is a part of you that is, yes, feminine, but there's also part of you that was masculine too, and still is. And as long as you repress that masculinity, it's gonna bite you. It's gonna say, 5 years from now, down the road, after your surgeries are all done, all the transitioning is done that you could do, it's gonna go, hey, remember me? I'm that dude you left behind.
Yep.
That dude wants out. And it's gonna be like Montezuma's revenge,
Big time.
because it's gonna want you back. And it's gonna say, wait a minute, who's that? Who's her?
Yeah.
You know? And it's like,
The fun's over.
you know, finding a way to make peace with both of you, of those two sides of you, is the best compromise that you can make. You know, after you've transitioned and done everything, I'm not telling you to do transition. Some might, you know, but what I'm saying is that when you make peace with yourself, and I mean all of you, not just the part of you that you want to love,
Exactly.
you know,
It's
then
not like you
is
get to
when-
pick, like where mom serves you food and you pick out the peas. No, you got to eat it all, because that's all part of the meal. You know, and you did have a life, and you did father children, or you mothered children, and you can't just like tear up their reality just to fulfill yours.
I mean, there's this one trans man that is in a whole heap of problems now. He had a full-time job as a professor, was a very distinguished person who even taught like religion or philosophy or something at a really prestigious university. And basically they were now a security guard, you know, and they had their man job that they wanted, and they had a surgery done, some type of procedure, and it didn't turn out really well.
Yeah.
And they were in pain, so they kind of like had problems with their job because of their inability to go back to work on time and everything. And now, you know, they find themselves without a house, without their children, and then they say, well, the children's mother has decided to take them in. It's like, no,
You're the
you're the
child's
children's
mother.
mother. It's not that didn't happen.
It's such a dissociated
It did happen.
disorder.
It
You
did
know,
happen.
Yeah. And it's like a person with schizophrenia that wants to fly off a building, people don't give them a flying cape and tell them go ahead and fly. So this
My
is what
cousin did. He broke his leg.
you know, we need other types of treatment and help and understanding of why we're in this kind of pain, why we had to hurt ourselves so much to fit a reality that we concocted in our minds, you know. And no one's saying don't be feminine, no one's saying don't be masculine, don't wear the clothes that you want, don't express the way you want. Heck, I was gonna say, butch lesbian have been walking around with male clothes and walking around like they're dudes all life. Really feminine gay men have walked around, you know, like, and doing whatever.
I mean, for me, I know transition has become something more than what it was initially. Initially, it was like a way to escape from my reality, you know. But as I've been through different situations and circumstances and being with you, I realized that transition is into becoming a better person, not by diminishing who Paul was, what Paul did, what Paul had, you know, but to understand that now by me being able to accept myself in a more complete way, and not to have secrets, and not to hide away, and not to cover things up, but to be open about my sexuality, about my personality, and different things about me. It's like you're becoming a person that is more well-rounded and able to be the best you that you can be. And
That's
it's
what
not
it's all
about
about.
being a woman. It's about being compassionate to both sides of you. And I'm still learning that. I'm still trying to embrace my male self and everything. But, you know, as soon as a trans woman, and any trans woman, that would be, of course, there's going to be people are going to say, oh, but not me. I knew I was a woman, and I understand that I was. And, you know, it's like,
No.
okay, I understand what you're saying, but deep down inside, when you're by yourself and you're alone in your room and you're with your thoughts, I mean, can you honestly say that? As a trans man, can you honestly say that that you don't miss Denise, you know, that you don't miss, you know, Lisa, that you don't miss these people that you obviously were, you know?
And the person that brought you to where you are today, the person that took all the abuse and the pain, you're just going to discard them away like they're a piece of trash? Do you realize how hard you as an individual had to work to deal with the things that you dealt with, to all of a sudden, here comes your false self and they're going to take over? That's wrong to do. That's wrong to do for other people that love that person. It's wrong to do for yourself, because you're feeding into the self-worthlessness that you believe that you were. So you were not worth anything, so now you're creating another person, and that's harmful. And every cell of your body will feel that, and you, mark my words, will get sick in the end, because that is way too much for any heart to bear.
It is, and your physical is attached to your emotional and mental and spiritual. It's all one. You know, your brain functions because your organs are talking to it. If you cut one organ out, then that means that a part of you is not able to communicate back to your brain, and there's a loss there.
There is,
you know.
I will never be the same, all the stuff that I did to myself, you know, and thank God I didn't decide to go all the way with a phallo or the other one, metaloplasty. But, you know, even whatever I did, that took years from my life. That took strength away. I used to be able to, as a female bodybuilder, I used to be able to lift way heavier than I can now, because after the hysterectomy, I've never been the same.
You never really went back into bodybuilding, did
No,
you?
I couldn't. I couldn't lift the way that I did before, because I always felt like, you know, I mean, they reattach your bladder and they do all sorts of different things. You're never the same. And you're taking years from your life because you're messing with your natural hormonal production. You know, it's one of those things that, as much as you try to go back to that original gender, you've messed yourself up. You have a history. I mean, 14, 15 years of testosterone use. Your whole body's makeup has changed. Yeah. You know, so the best thing is never do it. Never do it. I mean, that is my humble opinion. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about transgender. Is it really an identity? But anorexia is a disorder. Okay. So is this supposed to be it? Yeah. Okay. The Forever Over the Bathroom bill in North Carolina has given the trans movement the perfect kindling to continue fostering their campaign of nationwide acceptance, and also sparked semi-hysterical transphobic backlash of self-righteous traditionalists.
I do not consider myself in either camp. I approach this topic with a wrenching awareness of what it feels like to be disconnected from your body, to hate with every fiber of your being the way you look in the mirror, and to be willing to undergo great feats of self-mutilation to achieve a vision that is always just out of grasp.
Like Sparkles there couldn't face the camera unless she just made herself feel, you know, because there's obviously self-esteem. Yeah, self-esteem issues.
Unless you didn't see the boy.
Yeah, exactly. And if it takes, still after doing all that FFS and surgery, and you're still seeing a boy, you know. My perspective on the matter, however, probably would not go over well among most LGBTQ individuals. As a person who has struggled with anorexia nervosa since puberty, the transgender anguish resonates with me. The similarities between the two illnesses are striking, yet one is an identity and the other is a disorder. Why?
At the heart of gender dysphoria is the paradoxical desire to be characterized as something one simultaneously declares is ineffable, i.e. gender roles are illusory cultural constructs, but I yearn to concretely embody that illusion. The contradictory desire in transgenderism is similar in hopelessness as the desire in anorexia.
The goal is to be thin, and one is never thin enough until one is dead, like Karen Carpenter found out. The goal is to be a sex other one's biological makeup, and one cannot alter one's chromosome and genetic makeup. Because no matter what we do on the outside, We can never change.
And I know you're going to go into this whole, well, intersex thing, and intersex is a condition, and I bought it too for a while. But fact is that there are people who are intersex, like Anunnaki Ray, people that actually are intersex that fit categories of intersex.
Right.
I mean, you have intersex,
Or just an
things
induced
going on with
fertilization
you,
from my mother taking
but
that.
for most people in the trans community, they're endosex, which means that they're not in intersex at all. Well, if a man wants to wear makeup, dresses, even get breast implants, who are we to stop him? If he wants to legally change his name to Matilda, great. But language policing, the implication that by misusing a pronoun, we're savaging a person's very core, is untenable. Using he instead of she may very well hurt someone's feelings, but that is a level of sensitivity on par with agoraphobia, or the fear of crowded or enclosed public spaces. The onus is on the person to find ways of coping.
Which is a lack of the trans community.
The world cannot be responsible for validating a confusing, opaque issue that has been too quickly transferred from disorder to condition, from irrational to heroic.
So, an all-consuming desire to alter oneself. Advocates insist that gender dysphoria is not a pathology. The World Professional Association for Transgender Health, the WPATH, describes a disorder as a description of something with which a person might struggle, not a description of a person or the persons identified.
This is an absurd string of verbiage. A person's identity is not his or her biological sex. That is a part of a person's identity.
However, many individuals with gender dysphoria feel they must try to change their outward appearance to match their inner ideal. Due to the physiological makeup of a human body, however, this attempt is often mighty undertaking.
One may even go so far as to say it's a struggle. The intensity of this all-consuming desire to alter oneself is what I find most similar to my own illness of anorexia. We cannot rest until the outside matches the inside.
Many individuals with eating disorder assume an identity centered completely on that disorder. According to an article on the Social Issues Research Center website, pro-anorexia website exposes starvation as the right lifestyle choice for them and will allow them to achieve happiness and perfection.
Imagine if someone with a crippling obsessive compulsive disorder about germs could impose his beliefs. We'd be obligated to all carry gloves and wear face masks.
The same can be said for a chronically depressed exhibitionist. Accommodation and what is essentially encouraging a delusion is bound to improve the life of an individual who has felt like an alien in her own body for years.
Unfortunately, social support will never change the basic biological facts. Clinging to an illusion does not make a person crazy, marginalized, or inferior. It makes him human.
Remember your Descartes, feelings aren't reliable. We cannot rely on our feelings, as strong as they are. If I relied on all my feelings, I'd be dead. Why? Because my feelings tell me that eating food means gaining weight, and gaining weight is intolerable. Transgender children are apparently absolutely sure they were born in the wrong body. It is a belief held so deeply that we throw out all the entrenched knowledge of psychology and mental illness to appease it.
People with anorexia can often trace their discomfort with their own bodies back to early childhood as well. Both situations are abstract feelings that clearly contradict reality. The certainty that one is a woman, despite being born a man, sounds awfully similar to the conviction that one's body is overweight, even when body mass index is at starvation levels.
The feeling of hunger, the most primal, ingrained of psychological response, impels the individual to abstain. Can you question the depth of that belief?
No one with any understanding of the matter is denying that a mismatch exists between the person's brain and her body. The approach to wellness, quote unquote, however, is hopelessly backward. The brain is the component of this puzzle with the capacity for immense plasticity.
non-invasive reconditioning occurs every day. The body is the factor that is the hardest to alter in any meaningful way. So why are sex reassignment surgeries the gold standard treatment method in gender dysphoria literature? Why is such a drastic, violent procedure championed so fiercely?
The question is not whether someone's identity should be validated, but whether the validation should accompany an attempt to fabricate an impossible artifice. If a man feels he is a woman on the inside, this begs the question, what is a woman? The unswervingly nebulous explanation that abound in defense of transgender rights echo the desperate bravado of the pro-Anna crowd.
Adults have the right to dress, act, and live however they damn well please. But the swiftness, which the transgender condition, in quotation, has been accepted as mentally healthy, is unfair to both the public at large and the individuals themselves. There are no 100% effective treatment for anorexia nervosa, but that doesn't mean that how my mind is supposed to work and I should embrace it. The same should apply for gender dysphoria. You know, very simple there. You know, it's, the mind is it could fool you. You know, it could really do a lot of things. And when you have a medical community that is thinking, oh my God, we're going to have lots of money here. You're talking about, I mean, there's a waiting list now to get SRS. I mean, that's ridiculous.
There's this one guy, trans guy, who was in line to have a hysterectomy, and he needs to have it.
Yeah.
Or else he can't get his fellow in a couple months.
Right.
So he needs to have it done in a certain time frame. He's having a conniption because the hospital, for reasons, ethical reasons, since they're a Catholic hospital, they will not do the hysterectomy. So he's been referred to a different hospital. The hospital was gracious enough to, because basically the hospital had no idea that this person was transgender, but they wanted to, they were going to do the whole procedure, but they said, I just want to let you know that I'm transgender and that I would appreciate it if you would use all the appropriate pronouns for me. And if they would have shut their mouths,
they would have
just had their hysterectomy. But instead they had to have,
they want to push.
So they pushed it, and then they pushed themselves right out of the operation. And now they can't get the operation because something about the schedule being, not able to work.
They don't want to play with it anymore. And that's the thing. That's what I've been telling this community for the longest time. Back in the day when I started advocating, we were very humble. We were very meek. Nowadays, it's this in-your-face, drumming down your throat. You take it or else. And that gets nowhere. As a matter of fact, the pendulum has gone this way. It's going to go this way. Why? Because we are pushing this everybody's throat. This is not at all what we're making it out to be. The medical community is very irresponsibly pushing this so they can make money. They don't care about you or me or anything. They just care about the money they're making them. Damn, I got all these surgeries lined up at $25,000.
If they did care about us, I mean, if they really gave a shit, and that includes the WPATH, there would be a section in WPATH, that would have detransitioner information.
And they don't.
And they don't. And if you talk to a hormone doctor or to a GP about detransitioning, like, hey.
I don't know. They have no clue. And I know, because when I was trying to detransition, trying to get my paper back to it was like a whole mess. To this day, there is not a protocol for that.
No, even Walt Heyer, who lots of trans advocates really hate, can't change his birth certificate back to male in the state of California. So easy to change it, in California, but it's so hard to change it back. How is that? Why is that?
And it's like this whole thing. I mean, who's pulling these strings? That people's reality, which is not the true reality, have allowed all this stuff to take place. I could understand. I mean, I'd be happy with an X. I'm different, so that I don't get, questioned for using a certain bathroom. If you look it and when you have the X, you're entitled, but to just change everything around. So then when you realize at the end of the game, like, you know what, damn, I've missed being who
Yeah.
I was. I just want to quietly just go back. You can't even do that. You can't even do that. There's no support for the transitioners. I mean, you talk to a therapist and they don't want to hear about it. Oh no, I only took you that way.
Yeah, we were
Back.
talking to a group of therapists that we were invited to interface with and on Skype. And Mark mentioned something, I forget, and then they're like, "Oh no.
Because that's not what they're being taught.
No,
it's
no,
like
no,
a,
no, no.
it's like a pro-rote. It's a protocol, and there's no room for
Autism
error.
spectrum inside the transgender community?
No room for
Oh,
error.
no, that can't be true.
No room for any wiggle room. No room. And I mean, these are things that are all just being learned as we go along. They're shooting at the hip.
Oh no, it was Asperger's.
Asperger's. Yeah.
Talking about Asperger's and stuff,
Yeah.
it's
Which
like,
the majority, 98% of the people in the trans community have that, and they have
coping, inability.
neurological
escapism.
impairments. Yeah. And it all stems from this next and last article that we're going to share, understanding behaviors, because this whole phenomenon of being born in the wrong body. I'm sorry, because even intersex people, they're not born in the wrong body. Their genitalia just developed a little different. One testicle dropped, the other one didn't. There's no wrong anything. Just things happen, variation of nature. You're a girl that's masculine, you're a boy that's feminine and sweet and sensitive. It's a beautiful trait. You shouldn't be bullied into believing that you need to be the opposite gender to fit in. Anyway, in the last 10 years, there has been an explosion of understanding of the brain and its bioneurological process. Autism, or sensory processing disorder, has been one of the major contributors, coupled with the advanced brain imaging technology we now have at our disposal. Scientists are making new discoveries at alarming rates.
Positron emitting topography, PET scans, functional MRIs, EEGs, and numerous dyes all help to measure physical processes in the brain. It has been discovered that cells can learn. We used to think that cell's nucleus was the brain of the cell. We now know that it is actually the membrane. The membrane decides what it will allow inside the cell.
The receptor science on the membrane surface can be influenced to let substances enter that cell may have originally been designed to do, may not be originally designed to do. Some cells are more easily convinced to allow this change, and when they do, this foreign substance can actually change the DNA of that cell.
If the DNA has been altered, the cell will have a memory of the change and will transfer to the next generation. In other words, environmental influences on our ancestors' cells have a direct effect on our genes. In essence, we are describing evolution. Our environment, our stresses, what we eat and breathe, has a direct effect on how our neural system develops.
Arousal levels. To learn, the brain needs to be in an optimal state of arousal. There are 3 things that contribute to arousal: sensation, cognition, and emotion. All 3 are constantly interfacing with one another.
Sensation includes the input from our senses: eyes, ears, skin, mouth, and smell. Children are naturally sensory seeking. Ideally, our brain takes in the sensations, processes and makes sense of the information, and then produces an appropriate response. The brain needs sensory input. When we change our position or fidget with our hands while sitting at a conference, it's not to simply increase our circulation. Our brain needs constant sensory input.
It is food for the brain. One only has to look at past real-life experience and experiment of sensory deprivation to know the detrimental effects it can have on the brain. It's like when you were a little kid and you were sitting there left alone and you felt the sensation of the clothing, you liked that sensation, or you're wondering how it would feel like if you actually went in there and tried on those clothes. That programming kicked into your brain, because that's how the brain works. That's how behavior is engaged. That's how traumas, when we're slapped around as a kid for doing something and our parents bully us in a certain way, we develop abnormal behavior. Cognition is the thinking contribution we make to our state of arousal. It can increase or decrease levels of arousal. Individuals with sensory processing disorders have given us further insight to the importance of this factor. Dr. Temple Grandin, a well-known individual with autism, has explained that when she enters a room, she is bombarded with sensory input: the lighting, the picture on the wall, the placement of the furniture, the hum of the air conditioning, and so on and on.
She must use her cognition to lower her arousal level. To do so, she tells herself that she has been in similar rooms in the past and she does not need to pay attention to the sounds or decor. In this way, she is then able to pay attention to what is important. Of course, it is an extremely exhausting process.
Emotion is a third contributor to our state of arousal. Various neurotransmitters are produced by specific parts of the brain, and we now know that they are very important contributors to our emotions. To be overly simple, if dopamine is altered, a person may be out of touch with reality. If norepinephrine is altered, a person may be manic. If GABA is altered, one may be anxious, and so on and so forth. A person with depression will have a low state of arousal, while a person with anxiety will have a high state of arousal. All issues that the trans community face.
Emotions. We are capable of experiencing either positive or negative emotions. There is no such thing as a wrong emotion. In fact, negative emotions can push us into action to make changes. However, there can be wrong emotional responses. In other words, if we continue to wallow in negative emotions, we will experience the effects in our body in many ways. Damaged immunity, digestion problems, sleep disturbances, heart disease, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on.
Even though every thought has a physical effect on our cells, chemical reactions are produced throughout our bodies by thoughts and emotions. As discussed earlier, emotions are reliant on many neurotransmitters being in a state of equilibrium. Both genetic and environmental influences contribute to this state of balance.
In conclusion, the human body is an incredibly complicated system. We like to separate physical organs from neurological brain, just as we like to separate physical ailments from behavior or mental health disorders. However, as research is beginning to reveal, they are all completely intertwined with one another. Emotions, behavior, and mental health all have undisputable physical causes and effects on the human body.
With continued research, we hope to better understand how to assist individuals to live a life of optimal equilibrium. It may not be perfect. We may not be able to reverse the genetics of it, but hopefully we can, as Kim remarked, participate in the individual's journey of life with a disability. And, that was an occupational therapist who actually, I'm going to go ahead and put the link on the show here so you guys could actually check out. She works with a lot of disabled children, a lot of individuals, with psychological issues. That's a very arena for occupational therapy. That's why I'm so well versed in psychology.
Oh, you're qualified to talk about
Oh, of course, I'm well qualified to talk about all this great stuff. There are individuals that are trying to help humanity without just giving pills. Prescription drugs, hormones, surgeries do not fix our problems. Those are Band-Aids. And eventually, that wound is going to get infected and it's going to create more problems because you can't just cover it up and hope that it's going to go away.
You really can't, because it won't go away that way. The important thing to know is that there are solutions that are available to us, to every single person, without the influence of big pharma, without the influence of doctors. We rely on them in this society too much. And if we only realize that the root causes of so many diseases, of so many problems that we're suffering from in society today, especially in Western civilization, the United States specifically, is really not just a physical ailment. It is an issue that resides inside of us, of unresolved traumas, childhood problems that we decided long ago to bury, to hide, to not express.
This is too hurtful to pull it out, to actually be naked in front of yourself and talk to yourself and really, try to help heal yourself. Because no one's going to heal you. Even when you go to a psychologist or when you go to a psychiatrist, they're not healing you. They're just having you speak about the issues that you had when you were younger so you could bring them out on the surface and learn to deal with it. going back to your childhood days and reliving those emotions and doing things differently, even if it's in your mind. Even if you have to take a situation and relive it and tell your younger self how differently you would do it now. Because back then you didn't know how, and you were told all these things that you're bad, you're not worthy. Now you're an adult. You don't have to continue to act in that childish mind. You're able to create changes. You're able to heal yourself naturally, effectively, with meditation, proper foods, exercise, learning how to love every bit of yourself, not just the part that you enjoy and you like, every single part of you, because you need that to heal. And I want to share.
Here's a quote from this doctor that we're going to share a video from real
Yes.
quick. But it says, a hurt is at the center of all addictive behaviors. The wound may not be as deep and the ache not as excruciating. And it may even be entirely hidden, but it's there. As we'll see, the effects of early stress or adverse experiences directly shape both the psychology and the neurobiology of addiction in the brain.
And it's all neurological. That's what I've been saying. Transgenderism, this gender dysphoria, is all based on neural imbalances. It's a neurological condition that is being treated incorrectly. And there's a lot. I mean, just like the anorexia nervosa, it's considered a condition. So why is gender an identity? Why is that? Why can't they, stop kidding people and really do the work? You have to.
Well,
do
they're
the
already
work.
trying to tap it out of being a mental disorder.
And gender dysphoria in itself is not a mental disorder. That's just like a side effect. The disorder is the self-hatred, the self-worthlessness that you feel, the shame. That so that then you create this other persona because you don't want to feel the pain of the real you. So you want to create this other image.
So it's like a really fancy compartment where all these disorders
Mhm.
can all come and live together, and we can all be one big happy community
Yeah.
of disorder suffering people that can just deny our way into existence.
And we're enabling one another, because that's what happens. They enable one another. This is a very interesting video that I wanted to share here. Okay.
All the difficulties you experience, all the problems you have, exist quite simply because you don't want to go on. On some level, we don't want to take responsibility. So the question is, how to take responsibility? The reality is that every problem that we have can be looked at two ways. We can look at it as a difficulty we get rid of, or we can look at it as a message from our ourselves. We can look at it as something to overcome and get through, or we can see it as a possibility of learning. And he says that all the difficulties that we have are actually designed for us by a part of ourselves that loves us so much that it'll create extra difficulties for us if we don't get the message. What else can it do? So that I've actually had people with cancer come and say to me, you know what, this cancer is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've had people who overcome addictions say to me, the addiction is the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, what on earth are people talking about? And I don't say that I recommend those ways of learning. But what they are saying is that those difficulties overcome to the necessity of getting to know themselves and to accept themselves, and yes, to love themselves. And but through those experiences, they were too stubborn to learn. They were just going to stumble along life, living an alienated existence. And they were never going to wake up to who they really were.
That in itself is a tremendous, tremendous message. And I have the link. I know it's a very low volume. The link is actually down below, and there's another video of his that I've also have linked there. You know, it's very important because you were saying that, you know, that this path has showed you ways of loving yourself, even though when you did this path, it was of running away, but now you have and are learning. And like he was saying there, you know, some people say that cancer has been a gift because it taught them so much about themselves and how to take care of themselves. And so if it takes transition to help you grow and learn, then I say by all means, but don't let transition be the death of the true you. Because this facade that you're creating, this costumes that we're wearing is not the true us. This is something we created to be able to deal with life, to be able to stand the pain or to hide or to numb ourselves. The true you is the most amazing thing ever. We're not a mistake. We never were. Love yourself unconditionally. Find other avenues to help yourself, to heal that pain that you have been dealing with from the day you were born, from the moment they yanked you from your mother's womb and cut that umbilical cord in a cold, cold environment, from the moment that you were sent to school and your life turned upside down because the trust in that woman that gave life to you has now been ripped out of your arms and you're placed with strangers. From the moment we are born, we are faced with so much trauma and so much hurt. We're told that we are not, that we have wicked hearts. Religion tells that all the time. You are a wonderful human being the way you are. And by loving yourself unconditionally, that means untainted, no surgeries, no hormones, no nothing, just you will finally find that love and peace that you yearn for. No one else
Couldn't
does
say
that.
anything better. You know, I mean, it's all about this journey to love yourself. You know, it's like you had always said, you know, what's the statement you make at the end of the show?
I love you, but remember to love yourselves too.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, loving yourself includes loving all of you, not just the part of you that you want to accept, not just the part of you that you want to
create,
yeah. Not just the part of you that does exist. We're not saying that your self that you want to promote right now because that's the person that you want to be at this moment in time. We're not saying that that person doesn't exist. We're saying that that person isn't all there is to you.
Exactly.
There's more to you than just the person that you accept and love. There's that person that was disregarded, was made fun of, was left out in the cold, was abused, was, you know, traumatized.
And you're doing no different to that person that everybody else has done. So be different. Love yourself. I can't stress that enough. 52 years old. I've lived in this turmoil from the moment that I came out of my mother's womb, from the moment I was told that women don't do this, little girls don't play like that, little girls don't act that way. So self-fulfilling prophecy. And it was not the answer. It's not the answer for anyone. You know, I'm sorry, but it's not. Because all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid.
And we can't take people kicking and screaming. I mean, you know, there was this trans woman that I was commenting on something that they said. They're having a dilemma. They have a 7-year-old girl, and the little girl's having a birthday party. But the ex-wife and the ex-wife's friends and the family doesn't really want this person to be there, you know, the trans woman to be there, because it's embarrassing, whatever. And it's been a year since they transitioned, and they're thinking, you know, damn it, you need to understand and accept the reality of what and who I am. And it's like, you know, this isn't about this person. This is about your daughter. This is about the fact that your little girl wants to celebrate her birthday. And if you show up, you're going to be the talk, the conversation. The party's going to be distracted by your presence. And instead of just bowing out and laying low for this year or next year or the year after that. You know, celebrate a different way. Don't push yourself into other people's realities, you know, because they have a certain vision of who you are. And no matter if you look like some supermodel or whatever, they're never going to accept it. So instead of like giving yourself a headache, causing yourself depression, just be gracious and accept that they're not going to accept that part of you, and just give them the part of you that they want. You know, I mean, I don't know. I think that people make more of a mountain out of the issue of what clothing that someone should be wearing. I mean, if
Because they
my
wanna make
kid,
a
if my,
point.
okay, honestly, if any one of the 5 of my children, and this is an open invitation to any one of you, if you ever watch this video, if you guys want me to come to your birthday party and be your dad, I will go. I won't make a big deal, tie my hair in a ponytail, show up in a ball cap, wear a hat,
I'll shave and wear a wig.
I'll do whatever you want in order to make you feel comfortable. Because at the end of the day, it's really not about how I look now. It doesn't matter. It's not the focus that, you know, I'm like some new person. I'm still the same person, you know, but we make our world smaller because we want everybody to taste it the way we see it.
It's part of the validation. It's part of that femophilia. It's part of, you know, the whole.
I don't need it. You know, I mean, I don't need it. I live as myself, as the person that I've become. But I mean, if my kids were to ask me and say, you know, my son's in college, you know, right now, and the oldest, and he's going to say, if he would ever say, Dad, I would love to see you. Can you come up, you know? And I mean, I would. You know, if they wanted me to wear a dog suit, a bear suit.
Because in reality, you know, what's
Whatever.
this whole, it's just articles of clothing, wigs, and makeup. And those of you that go as far as like hurting yourself to replicate what you think a vagina is, you know, that doesn't change who you are. You could run away, you could do circles all day long. You're still you. You're still you. And I know you're going to go kicking and screaming and call it transphobic and do whatever, but at the end of the day, you are still you. You can't erase your past. You can't erase who you are.
I mean, if you think that you can, that's where you get into another whole can of worms, you know, because you're like, I mean, what's it like when, you know, a spring is compressed long enough, eventually that spring is going to want to jump back, you know. I mean, given the opportunity, that, you know, rubber band, you let it go, it's going to want to take off. You know, if you just, you know, accept what is, then you won't have to put yourself into those pressure situations, you know, and people will just, you know, just be.
Just work through
Just be.
the core pain. Work through those childhood traumas. Get to know you. Get to know the real you. You know, don't create this other person because you don't want to deal with your pain. It's easier to just create this character, like, you know, actors on the stage. And it doesn't mean that you don't have a female essence to you. There's a female essence in there somewhere, yes. But you don't have to, you know, do all these things to have validation from the rest of the world. Spend time with yourself, you know, meditate, talk to yourself, work that female side in healthier ways, not in the dysfunctional way that's being allowed this day and age to generate this.
And if you can, avoid the pitfalls of what transitioning actually entails for so many of us.
Yeah.
I would highly, highly recommend that you not walk down this path. You know, it's rocky, it's dangerous, It's difficult. It rips your heart out. It's very hard. So take it from a person, from people that have been down this path, and don't do as we did, you know, because we're lucky we found each other.
Yeah.
But it doesn't end up like that for so many. And the story's yet to be written, you know, and we're yet to, you know, deal with the ramifications of what we've done to ourselves. But
There's a lot of work to be done, a lot
Yeah.
of healing, a lot of forgiveness that we still have to do, you know, but it's life, you know, like that video said earlier, you know, that sometimes you have to go through the pitfall, you have to fall off a mountain, you have to hurt yourself to actually heal and to actually see. So anyway, we've talked long enough. It's going to be 2 hours. Of
whoa,
show.
that's a long show.
Yeah, long show, but it was a good show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, just, you know, reflect. Okay, guys, we love you, but remember to always love yourselves too. Good day.